and welcome to everyone. Thanks for coming. Today, I'll kick off. So there's a few of us, so we might be able to kind of make this more of a engagement session. Thanks for joining. We continue to run these sessions. This is now month 4, and we do kind of get a lot of interest post the training. People ask us a lot of questions. Or training is the wrong word. Past the session, people ask us a lot of questions, and one of the emerging opportunities is we're probably going to move this to more of a podcast kind of process rather than a kind of show and tell or like discussion that's going on. So from January, and the podcast will be with guests like yourselves, different assessors around the world, what they're doing, how it's going. So we're emerging into that kind of a process, which I'm quite excited about. So more on that coming next year. And again, we continue to explore the world of assessment as a whole. Today was a topic that was kind of, we sent out polls across, LinkedIn and to the email group, and asking, what topic do you want? So out of about 250, 270 replies, about 200 of them were actually asking about how to upskill your assessor. So that's why we are doing this today. And again, so please, it is being recorded. This will be kind of placed into our YouTube channel afterward, and the link will be sent out. So just give me 1 second. Sorry, so the space I was in, that just had to ask me. Okay, so so that's what we're talking about today. The previous weeks, we've covered topics around the QCTO, which is a South African it's a vocational body for some of the international clients that ask us, the CETAs, how to build assessments, how to consider that information. So let's dive right now into the question of how do you upskill your assessors? So, and again, as we go, because there's not so many people, please put your questions into the chat room. So into the chat area, if you have questions or comments, and then we'll break at different times and we'll talk through those questions and comments as we go. All right. So let's carry on. So basically, in order to understand how to upskill your assessors, I think what we've got is, where you got to start is the concept of assessment. What is the purpose? And really, assessment is for skills continuity and traceability. And what we find is if we can keep the thinking, or if we can shift the mindset in the world of development and the world of skill alignment to understanding this as a concept, we'll start developing the role of the assessor quite differently. So rather than just a 3-day assessor training program with an educational governing body to tick a box that someone has done a course, we start moving into the purpose around this continuity and this traceability of evidence. So in this image, kind of, the assessor is scrutinizing or looking at or making a decision around video type evidence, or it could be spreadsheets or Word documents, Power BI, anything out there that enables you to do your job, or that you are required to do your job with the tool. At the end of the day, the assessor, the person who is trying to reward you or award you with an output, a judgment on your competence, is pretty much checking your continuity. And the missing piece, the whole missing piece on this entire industry, is the traceability of it. So I'll give you an example of this. We do performance management, you do recruitment, we do skill assessment, we do summative assessments, and we being the governing bodies or the people that do the hiring, trust that by virtue of you having a CV and a certificate that you can do the job. We trust that the observation checklist that was ticked off, that the assessor was actually standing in front of the person doing the work, ticking the checklist off and signing it. We trust that the signature belongs to the person who says it belongs to that person. We trust that the call center agent can actually answer the phone correctly because they've got a qualification. But if you took any of that evidence to get a bank loan, to buy a car, to get a bond, to get financing, they would in no way accept that because it's non-traceable. This is where the challenge kicks in. So they in themselves are conducting assessment. Now, the assessor is saying that the end user that they're looking at can do the competence or the skill. The missing piece is the traceability. Show me that they can do it. Prove that they really can. And up until now, this has been one of the difficulties around the world of assessment as a whole. You know, if you claim insurance, they send the assessor around to video the break-in or the broken down car, if you or the damage done to the window, and they take photographs and they take videos, and that's the traceability that we're talking about. And in the skill space, in the human skill space, the traceability is really a missing piece in the whole puzzle of assessment. Right. A lot of learners submit logbooks, or, you know, if you're in the workplace, and a logbook is just the tracking of, did you go to work? Were you on time? And did someone watch you work? Now, if the supervisor or the manager or the person who signs off the logbook doesn't have an understanding of the principles of assessment and they don't like the learner, then they're going to say, no, they don't like them. The provider who receives the results go, oh, well, the learner doesn't know what they're doing because the manager didn't sign them off. And from an appeals perspective, there's no real evidence or traceability around who's actually right. And it becomes a he said, she said scenario. Okay, so that is the foundation around the direction that assessment is going and needs to go. A lot of people complain it's a lot more work. And sometimes, yes, but this is where the digital side starts kicking in. Right. So, myth one. There is a myth out there that assessors are coaches. Your assessor is not your coach. And what I mean by that is the assessor's role is to simply review a set of evidence against a set of standards and decide on a result. Because certain things have been done in certain ways for so long, what companies tend to try and do is they try and make the facilitator, the person providing content, also the assessor, also the coach, also the mentor of the learners. They try and tick 4 boxes in one. Now, this is possible and very doable. However, the person who's allocated the 4 roles then cut corners. So what they do, and it's really cutting corners to save their time. So they assess, coach, and mentor all in one sitting, and that causes overwhelm. So it's kind of overwhelming to the learner or the user who receives the feedback, and it causes confusion. So we've really got, this is a myth. The assessor is not the coach. The person who's playing the assessor's role is purely the role is to review the evidence against a set of standards and decide if the evidence meets the standard. Done. Once the assessor role is done, and that is done, then they move into coaching. It's a step. They take the hat off, they go have a cup of coffee, they think about it, they come back, and then they can step into the coaching or mentorship role where they get face-to-face with the learner, give them feedback, coach them on what they've got to do. The assessor role explains the gap. Now, in some cases, the assessor, this is where the coaching goes in, because they go, oh, you didn't serve the cup of coffee well, and you need to go and read page 8, and they start coaching the learner. So it's not wrong, but it does cause confusion. So this is a
Sorry,
basic.
Darren, can I
Yes,
hop in
go
here?
ahead. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Hi, Jonathan Wigley. I'm an instructional designer with Skills Link Academy. I'm coming from assessment more from a designing perspective.
Yes, yes,
And what I want to point out is that the formative assessment that takes place during facilitation,
yes.
that's where the coaching element of assessment comes in, when the facilitator is conducting formative assessment. And in that point, during the formative assessment, there is obviously a coaching element to it, because as a formative assessment, the facilitator is trying to convey the skill or the knowledge to the learner. And if they're incorrect, it is part of the facilitator's role to correct it.
So
Is
don't
that
absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. Yes, the challenge is when so if we take it very separate. So if we just go back to very separate before we bring it together, what often happens is the assessment that's conducted is not clearly articulated. So the assessor doesn't clearly tell the learner what they did and what they didn't do. They go straight into coaching because of what they see. So in essence, what the facilitator should do is the formative assessments happen. The facilitator conducts an assessment on the learner through the formative, and then as a new action, they kick into coaching, a coaching role.
yes, no, absolutely. Yeah, I
Okay.
agree.
And that's what this is about. But what most people do is they go, oh, most facilitators is they don't have time, they don't have inclination, so they just go straight into coaching. And first of all, most of the learners don't even know where their gap is because assessment hasn't been done and reported, it haven't been explained. So the learners actually have no real concept of what's going on. They just take the coaching as a whole. Also, what you find is if four learners are all doing the same thing wrong, the facilitator can do coaching on all four as opposed to one-on-one repeating themselves. So, yeah, and that's the agreement, Jonathan. Also in the workplace integrated learning spots, it's the same scenario. The learner's doing the work, but they don't create enough evidence. So the assessor doesn't really know what's going on. So they just assume because the supervisor got angry with the learner and they get into a coaching role, but they don't really know what's caused the gap because the evidence doesn't excite. And that's what this is about. So the role of the assessor is to assess. The role of the coach is to coach. Can be one person, but they shouldn't be at the same time. If that makes so that's in essence what I'm saying here. But thank you for that, and that's really good. Moving into the QCTO space, what will happen is the training companies do the training up until the internal moderation. So they do the formatives, they do the summatives, they do internal moderation, they create a statement of results. Then the learner goes for the ACER. It appears at the ACER level, there's no space for coaching. So you will do the ACER, you'll write the exam, you'll be found not competent. Then you'll have to go back, do some study, and the coaching happens after the ACER, and you have to go rewrite it. So either way, it comes down to assessment being conducted by an assessor and coaching being done by a coach, even though it's the same person. Cool. All right. So measures, the start and the beginning. Okay. So these are kind of the key reasons why people assess or why assessment takes place. The first one is assessment for learning, also known as RPL, recognition of prior learning, also known as VPL, validation of prior learning, also known as PLC, which is prior learning conduct. And there's and then so that's Australia. There's PLA, which is prior learning assessment. In essence, assessment for learning is giving the learner or the user, even in your recruitment space, you're trying to assess someone for not necessarily learning, but for a job. So you give them a set of standards up front, you define a portfolio of evidence, and you say, good luck, go and do this. Right. They submit the portfolio, and an assessor gets involved, conducts an assessment, and you have a gap. That then defines what learning the learner should do. And into the future, this is becoming the way that people are going to go. In other words, it's a diagnostic assessment. Right. Then you do assessment in learning or during learning, and that's the formative assessments to check what the learners are retaining. Okay, and I got that twice because that's how important it is. Then you've got the assessment of learning, and that's the summative assessment, the assessment that happens after the learning to see what the learners learned. And this is where ROI becomes so vastly important, because if you do an assessment for learning and then you do an assessment of learning, you can measure pre versus post. What was the learner doing before the training? What are they doing after the training? And the only intervention that happened between that was the training, so training can show the value. And it becomes a financial formula. But that's assessment for. Then you've got assessment as learning. And this is workplace and self-directed assessment. So in essence, assessment as learning is those toolbox talks that happen, the pre-shift meetings, the post-shift meetings, the during shift engagement. When the standard is clear and upfront, then the end user is building a portfolio of some kind, and they are doing I don't know how to answer this course, so they go do some self-directed learning. I don't know how to do this piece of work. So if you look at the MOOCs, the massive open online courses, Udemy, edX, some of their courses have 100,000 signups, but only 3 or 2 or 1,000 people complete the course. And what they've come to learn is because the person only needs module 1 and 3 of the 5 modules. They don't need the whole program, so they come in for what they need and they drop off. And this was the start of the micro-learning opportunities. So as you're doing your instructional design, although you probably design in a logical process, A, then B, then C, then D, from an assessment of learning, assessment for learning, if you've designed well, the end user can then access the content from an assessment as learning component, because they only need a little bit of information right now in order to continue their jobs. And if that can be stored and captured into a portfolio, that can go eventually towards credits and competencies and micro-credentials and all the other beautiful words that are emerging. The last assessment type is your assessment of service or assessment of production. So what you find, or what we've come to find, is when something goes wrong and people do a root cause analysis, one of the difficult parts that they have on the root cause analysis is the person, the human's role in whatever the issue happens. So it's easy. Not easy. It's if you're skilled, it's easy, but it's time consuming, and there's rules in place to analyze a machine. You plug in, your car goes in for service and they plug it in, and the computers kind of tell you what's going on. Product stuff, touchable, non-human, is fairly easy. It's easier from an assessment perspective, but the human engagement is where the difficulty comes in. And this is where I predict in the future that assessment, the human assessor, will not be replaced by AI in a very short amount of time. So AI will replace probably your accountants and your lawyers and the kind of degree level stuff, because that's all process driven in the middle. But the lower end stuff, robots serving food and beverage, or that's not going to be so quickly replaced. There's thousands of reasons for that. So in the service and production area, the assessment of that, and this is generally a performance review. It's generally one of those management by objective reviews. So those are the key reasons for assessment. When you are recruiting, you are probably measuring the assessment of learning, maybe not as a summative, and the assessment of service. But in the recruitment space, they simply look at your CV. They see that you have 20 years of experience. They go, oh, good, let's do a video of you. Oh, hi, great to see you, nice video. And they put that onto the client. But it's that continuity and the proof that you can do it that's missing. And this is why assessment takes place. So it's a little bit larger than just from a space of credits on a 12-month learnership, in order for a person to get some kind of a qualification. Although that's an important part, it's not the only part. Okay. All right. So in assessment, we talk about the principles of assessment. And this is a vastly overlooked kind of step in the process of assessment. So most assessors did their training 42 years ago when everything started, just after Noah got off the ark. And, they kind of got into a rut because the training provider has said to them, we don't care if the person is competent or not. Find them competent. We got to sign them off because we got to give them the green badge so that they can get their qualification. The workplace goes, no, we need that 5-day program into a 5-hour program. Make that happen. Find them competent. Okay, so all of this kind of rolls out in business. But there is a problem here, and the problem will emerge one day when there is precedent. And the precedent is the assessor, the person who is the assessor, is the final say on competence. They are the person that looks at the evidence and says this person can or can't do the job. So they are the person that says the medic can do mouth-to-mouth resuscitation or, whatever those terms are. They are the person that says the energy practitioner can measure the energy efficiency of the building. They are the person that says that the person can actually put on a firefighter uniform. This person can serve a cup of coffee. All right. However, when that's all measured by a written exam, that cannot tell you that the skill of the person can do the skill. So remember, we're talking about how to upskill assessors at the moment. That's the topic. What I'm doing is I'm painting a background of where does the upskilling begin. So I'll come to that in a few moments. Okay. So just a refresher that the principles of assessment is the results, the evidence that shows the continuity and the translation of the process has to be valid, authentic, consistent, current, sufficient, and reliable. So we have this concept of consistency. If it's not done more than once, so if it's not done twice or more, the assessment can't be consistent because there's no 1 and 2. And of course, the question then rolls out, if they don't get it right the first time and they do get it right the second time, is that consistency? Good question. It's got to be authentic. It's got to be from a reliable source. A signature doesn't cut it as a reliable source if there is an appeal. So what I mean by that is the training providers, the people that receive the portfolios, get all these squiggles on an exercise page, which are called signatures. But the moderator doesn't have, or very seldom has, the assessor's photograph, signature to compare the signatures to. Right? So this authenticity becomes questionable. So what happens is this. In about 82, 83, there's a Vol Reef disaster. Someone didn't do some work. So they didn't pull up a handbrake or something on a locomotive. It went over a cliff. It went over the lifts going down to the mine. A couple hundred people were killed. And basically what happened was the mining company shut and welded the training venue closed. And as they started doing a root cause analysis, they went back to the person who signed off the competence of the worker who didn't pull the hand lever up. And they wanted evidence that the person who signed them off, that the observation checklist that was completed, that he was actually standing there watching the learner do it to sign off. The learner turned around and said, I've never seen this man before in my life. I wasn't on training. The facilitator said, no, I signed it off. There's my signature. I proved it. And of course, the court case ensued. So in essence, what's emerging and what will emerge is, like insurance, no one cares about anything until something goes wrong. So our assessors are signing off learners, putting their John Hancock, their signature, onto the competence of a learner around the world. Recruitment agents, performance managers, assessors for skills development, assessors for competence, assessors for micro learning, professional body designations, people are signing off giving that this person has a designation, but never understanding the skill of the person, only because they got a certificate and a degree. Well done, you got a certificate and a degree. Great, you must be competent. Well, you've worked at the company for 12 years, you must be competent. The question comes in is that really competence, and are the principles really being met? So that's the principles of assessment, and kind of how it's kind of being overlooked at the moment. Now, do we have to solve it? No, we don't. It's just what it is. So you have the right way and you have the way things get done. And what, in essence, when you're upskilling your assessors, if you upskill them to the right way, you'll probably never get anything done, to be honest. So you kind of want to upskill them just to above getting things done, so that you can remain a leader in the market of what's going on. Okay. So, a framework. Now, as P4P, we play in the world of assessment a lot. We do digital assessment. We've done some deep research around the time and costs of research. We've done time and motion studies. How many minutes does it take an administrator to get a portfolio, put it together? How many minutes does it take an assessor to complete an assessment and post it? So we've done some really detailed research around it. We've engaged with assessment experts around the world. We've looked at the research around the world, and pretty much what's emerged is a few of us in South Africa have gotten together, and about 2 or 3 years ago, and in this research we came up with a framework, a competency framework for an assessor, and I'll speak about the proficiency levels in a moment. But what we've come to experience is that there are these 7 competencies that an assessor of today should have. Whether you are assessing learning, whether you are assessing recruitment, whether you are assessing performance management, whether you are assessing validity of micro-credentials, whether you are assessing designations, CPD, these are the 7 competencies. And the recommendation that we do is, if you want to upskill your assessors, and I'll show you in a moment, consider using these 7 competencies. And of course, you can define them in your own way, although we've done definitions around it. And this is kind of the baseline to understand where your assessors are before you start upskilling. So one of the competencies is understanding the principles of assessment, reporting component, assessment process, conducting the assessment, the use of assessment tools, providing feedback, the use of digital resources, and engaging with stakeholders. So those are the 7 key competencies around an assessor. And if you look at the assessor training that's out there, the UN is busy doing some good work on assessor development. You've got your assessment for informal and non-formal learning, as well as formal learning. You've got your Digimarcon happening, where they're trying to digitize learning, and they're creating the digital citizen. All of these are looking at assessments in one way, and these are kind of this is a framework that I recommend. I'll send you a copy of the slides when we're done. You're welcome to play with it if you want to. It's fine. We are starting to build a movement that you can join as well. All right. So this here is the baseline of why we assess, what assessment is, and the baseline to decide on where you want to start upskilling your assessors. Right. Okay. At this point, I just want to check if there's any questions. All right.
No questions.
Okay. So we're still quite a small group, it looks like. All right. Does anybody have any questions, or otherwise I'll just keep going? Nope. Okay, let's go. Upskilling, what is the gap? Okay, so, sorry, that I thought I took that slide out. I'm deleting it. It was from a previous presentation. So here is the concept of a designation quadrant. So when I talk about designation, using those 7 principles that I showed you on the previous slide, we've launched, so in 2021, 2022, we never really picked up, but we launched this kind of body that's emerging as a professional body for assessors. So it kind of overcuts ASTA. There's a few training bodies that are really, really good out in the market. But we really just focusing on the assessor side, on the assessment side. And so what we looked at is we looked at those 7 competencies, and we've come to define 7 designations or 4 designations around assessor, and they fit into a quadrant. So on the y-axis, you've got the assessor for training and skills development, and on the x-axis, you've got the assessor for business and work. Okay, so basically what we do is we term them the following: the person who needs to assess for training and for business, that person we've termed a workplace assessor. The assessor who's got to assess more for training than for business is what we call a foundational assessor, which is the majority of the assessors in the training world around the world. Their job is to assess for the training provider. They're not really focused on what the business does. They're focused on what the qualification outcomes require. So when your chef goes to a hotel to do their 6-month prac, and they're supposed to do cooking and cleaning, they often spend the next 6 months peeling potatoes and chopping onions because no one else wants the business the kitchen want that job, and then the head chef signs him off. It's just because it's what business is, and that's your foundational assessor. Your assessor who is building skills development and business alignment strategies. So what they're doing is they're going, what is the business competencies? What are the micro credentials required? And how do we tie that into our skills development outcomes qualifications so that one portfolio satisfies recruitment requirements, business competency requirements, credential requirements, micro learning requirements, designation requirements? That is what we would call a create, design, and evaluate assessor. So they play in the learning space as well as the business space. They are the conduit, kind of the work of an SDF, but for an assessor. So these people are not interested in content. They're interested in the right assessment criteria, alignment matrices, and the right portfolios that enable that. And then the assessor who's focused less on training, but more on business. So your supervisor, your manager, we termed a practical assessor. So this is just from what we found works. And again, there's far more detail around this on a website I'll send you later. If you want to go, use it, use some of it, use all of it. Really, it's okay. It's about developing this industry of assessors. So from an upskilling perspective, we would recommend decide what upskilling you want your assessors to do. All 4 of these different designations each of them require all 7 of those competencies. So each of these, but just at a different proficiency level. So in terms of upskilling, what is the end goal? Why do you even want to upskill assessors? If you simply just do yes, no, if you simply just do written exams, right? And the assessor has to mark against the marking memorandum. Well, there's no real point in an upskill because all they're going to do is submit the workbook, everything's ticked, the learner's competent, everyone moves forward. If you want to move into more of a workplace engagement, you're probably looking at more of your workplace assessor where they spend, it's kind of this, training and business. It's like a 50-50 split kind of scenario. So none of these are right. None of these are wrong. None of them are good. None of them are bad. You don't want to get to any one of them. They're kind of progressive in what they do, but they're not dependent on each other. So you could be a total creative design and evaluate assessor, but by virtue of that, you would be all other 3 assessors. A workplace assessor, you probably won't really have a deep understanding of skills development. You'll have a high level understanding. You have a high level of the business. Right, a practical assessor, you fully understand the business. You just need to understand the VAX principles and along those lines. So decide why you are upskilling your assessors. Okay, and this is talking about those levels at a proficiency level. So in our world, the 4 is the creative design and evaluate assessor. So that's a number 4 assessor. A 3 is the practical assessor, a 2 is the workplace assessor, and a 1 is the foundational assessor. Just so we can show it on graphs. It looks pretty cool on graphs, but you have to have a number in which to show it. Okay, so this is kind of where you want to build your baseline to map your assessors against, and from our experience, in order to measure them. You, of course, can design your own outcomes. You can, of course, design your own competencies, but without that, the purpose of upskilling your learners becomes great. What your assessors is well, what's the point? You really just got to have an understanding of what outcomes what it looks like once they're upskilled. All right. Baseline. Without the baseline, without the end measure, all the training in the world is irrelevant, all the content is irrelevant, not in and of itself, but in terms of the assessor. And, for like Jonathan, because you're talking about yourself being an instructional designer, so often what we find is the instructional designers design the most incredible work with the most incredible frameworks with everything in place. And then the company runs out of time to upskill the assessors. So they simply just drop the stuff to the assessor, go, good luck, keep assessing. And the assessor kind of is a bit of deer in headlights and doesn't really know what's going on, and gets stuck in their scenes. And I'm not saying this is what happens in your company. Please, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we see it often in the industry. We assume that the assessor understands how to log on to an e-learning platform, how to do true false questions, how to log on to YouTube and do stuff, how to, we have this assumption that the assessors know what they're doing. And we also assume that the assessors like technology. They don't. They're quite afraid of technology. They tend to shy away from it because they are comfortable and used to and find safety in ticking boxes on a piece of paper. So now you get something like the TVET colleges. The TVET colleges categorically will in no way whatsoever accept any form of digital. So I'll put that into example. The learner who does a video of themselves, they must take a screenshot of the video, put it into a Word document, and right there, this is actually a video of me doing this. And they post the Word or the PDF, they print the PDF document out and with that little image on, and they post it to the TVET because they will not accept a digital video yet. All right. Which then the upskilling of those assessors is very different to progressive companies that go, no, we're happy, like we work with firefighters. And what the firefighters do is they want to see if a firefighter is claustrophobic. So what they do now is they say to the firefighter, open your mobile phone, take a selfie video of you in your firefighter outfit and go climb into a 1x1 meter hole. So the firefighter takes the phone, they walk up to a little hole and they take a photograph or a video of it, going, this is 1x1. They put the phone down so it's videoing them, and they climb into the hole. They sit there for 1.5 minutes while the phone's being videoed. Then they get out, they stop it, and they submit the evidence. Okay, those assessors again are being upskilled as to what to look for, as if they were standing there in person. So you can see, depending on the way you build your portfolios or the way you require your portfolio to be built, will have an impact on how you need to upskill your assessor and where your assessors need to fit within the process. Right. Okay. So here's another interesting myth. Upskilling requires training first. Okay, so no, it doesn't. We have come to experience that on upskilling and reskilling, clients will spend about 60% of their time telling somebody what they already know and can already demonstrate they can do. 60%. So on a 3-day program, 2 days out of that 3 days is wasted time because they already know what they're doing. So if you want to upskill your assessor and you want to take them right back to the beginning, to the basics, you're going to waste a lot of time and piss a lot of people off because people are already stuck full-time, and basically they will do the minimum amount to get everything done as opposed to focusing on the value of what they currently do. So you're heading for trouble if you want to upskill doing training first. We also, when we convert people's learning into assessment, not learning, assessment of learning into a digital format. So I'm not talking about yes, no, true, false, and the stuff on LMSs. When you take the assessment guides and you convert this into a digital experience, what we find is clients that do the assessment before they do the learning have a far better longevity and adoption on their programs than clients who do learning first and then assessment. So many clients go, oh, it's compliance training, so we're buying an LMS or an e-learning system, bam, and they build all this content, and then we'll bolt on a quick knowledge test, right? That's from a learning perspective, that's great. From an assessment perspective, it has a very, very low output. All that measures is, did the person pass the test? The clients who digitize the assessment process first, and they take the instructional design, they take the e-portfolios, and they create portfolios and digitize that first. Now, I'm not talking about everything goes digital, because when you deal with level 1 and level 2 and level 3 learners, many of them aren't happy using cell phones and digital learning, so they still do the workbooks. But when the process is digitizing that workbook through photographs or through kind of doc scans, and that process digitized first, what we tend to find is the e-learning conversion is far quicker and far more effective, because the clients have learned how the assessment works. And once they've learned how the assessment works, then they learn how the content rolls out. And where we see our most success from level 4 down, because that's a lot of places where we play, is where it's a hybrid approach, where the e-learning is supplementary to the face-to-face training, and over a period of time, it kind of starts like 70% face-to-face, 30% e-learning, and over a period of time, it flips to 30% face-to-face, 70% e-learning. But the assessment is what actually where the learners get the results, what's going on, how are they doing, and it keeps them engaged. So this is definitely a busted myth from our side. You don't have to train your assessors first to upskill them. You've got to assess them first. And often even the assessment upskills them in the process, because you get in to refresh their minds. Okay, so pretty much the process that we recommend is 1, decide on why you want to upskill, then decide on the standard that you want to upskill against. Is it one of your qualifications? Is it your company's new assessment policy? Is it the new digital assessment stuff that's out there? Why do you want to upskill? Once you understand that, you'll then understand if you need to upskill. You do, you don't, you'll figure it out. Then you want to diagnose. So don't go straight into training. You've got the standard, you've got the reason, you know what the portfolio must look like because you've got the standard. Then get your assessors to build the portfolio of evidence against the standard that you want to upskill them against, right? Get a development plan based on the gap, and then upskill them on the development plan. So what we found worked pretty well was where we used an alumni to upskill. So what we did was took 10 assessors, we worked up pretty much with 3 of them. The 7 were found competent, 3 of them were found not yet competent. And what we did was we got the assessors who were found competent to coach the girls who were found not yet competent. It was that mix. And it was a really good kind of process. It sped it up. It took less than a month, and people were upskilled to a specific level. It was great. It was a very, very good experience. Right. So that's how you upskill. The why you upskill is in place. The measure against the upskill is in place. And now the process for upskilling kicks out, and this is what we recommend. All right. Any questions or any comments at the moment? Or does anyone disagree? Tell me I'm wrong. Nope.
I'll just say that I'm finding this session very useful as an instructional designer. Yeah, giving me a lot of ideas in terms of how I'm going to start building more kind of diagnostic assessments in early on in a course.
Oh, nice.
That will allow the learner to conduct like a self-assessment.
Lovely.
and then redo the exact same assessment at the end and just see for themselves how they've progressed.
Yes, and you're going to get so much. So, Jonathan, if you want to consider it, try, depending on the length of the program, do that 3 times. So depending on how big the assessment is. So they do one in the beginning and they get 10%. They do one halfway through and they get 30 or 40%. That motivates them so much. They're like, whoa, I've gone from 10 to 40. This is amazing. You know, they get so excited. And then at the end, they do it again. They come up with 80 and the learner will buy the next course.
Almost like a gamification.
It's total. It's total that. And the beauty is that if you can get that right and they can use that evidence for recruitment. So you want to build it that they can extract whatever that assessment looks like. So when they go to an interview, they can show this is me serving a cup of coffee. This is me doing this. What it does is you start linking to business.
But also, like on a CV, if you say on your CV, look, I'm a fast learner, and then you can show, like, I started this course, it was 3 months.
Yeah,
I got 10% at the beginning, I got 90% at the end over 3 months. That proves I'm a fast learner. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
And now you're validating the learners. Now you're validating, and this is the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. That's amazing. Okay. Is there any? Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to offer you everybody a beta test. So what we have done is we've created this. It's a non-profit. It really is a non-profit. It's a bit emerging out of the goalposts, and it's called DLAP, the Digital League of Assessment Professionals. So it's a body. It's a movement around assessors. There's a lot of information on the webpage, which I'll send to you. But what we're doing is we actually have an entire matrix around the competencies and the proficiency levels of assessment. And we are running a beta for no cost. It's free, no cost. And what will happen is your assessors will sign up, and you'll be given a month to build a portfolio of evidence against these 7 criteria. The criteria are very well explained and very well mapped out. This is not a training course. It's an RPL initiative, in essence. It's a benchmarking. So you and all your assessors and all your friends can log on and do this. We have a group of 8 who are part of the company or part of the movement. Obviously, the more that come on, the better. So one of the board members of, I want to say APED. One of the board members of APED is part of this. One of the board members of SICA, the financials, is a part of this. We've got some SABBP people in terms of, they're part of assessing. What we're doing on this benchmark is the candidate assessor. Now, whether you are ETDP accredited or you had your PhD in assessment, or doesn't matter to us. You can build. You'll be given the opportunity to build a portfolio. There's even a question that asks you to do a selfie video of the state of assessment in the world. Okay. From that, you'll be assessed by one of our team, and you will be placed on a proficiency level. You'll actually get a certification going, according to this, you are certified. Now, we have registered with SACWA, but we haven't gone the whole route as the professional body yet. We didn't find the value in it. We're rather building from a ground-up experience around the market, in terms of what actually goes on versus ticking professional body boxes at the moment. So this is in beta. It's sitting on an e-assessment e-portfolio platform, which is ours. So you will literally build your portfolio, you will submit your portfolio, you'll rate yourself, and you'll have a month to do it, and you'll be assessed. Again, there will be no coaching on this. You'll simply get a result showing you where your strengths are, showing you according to this framework what's missing, with a recommended pathway to either staying on your level or progressing to an upper level if you want to. We have started talking to businesses and other institutions who are curiously looking at this, because into the future they're going, well, it'd be nice when we hire an assessor if we can ask them for their proficiency level, because if they get a proficiency level, we know what they can do and we can see their portfolio. So everything I've explained to you is kind of what we're doing. So this is going to be open for the next 3 months because we really want to kind of gain some momentum on this. We'll see how it's going from a beta side. So because it's beta, we're probably going to get things mixed up. We're probably going to, you'll find a few spelling mistakes here and there. Maybe the technology will limp a little bit. So because it's beta, we're building this into the market. Where this is going is that training providers and other companies can then do a benchmark of the assessors, or if they want to partner with assessors or contract with them, you can ask them for a proficiency level from DLAP because you know that it's trusted. Once you've got your proficiency level, then we're going to approach you and go, would you like to become an assessor from your proficiency level or down? So that we can use the skills of people. And eventually, if we get this right and we start billing for it later into the future, everyone can start make money from it. But that's not really the goal at the moment. So we have walked what I've shown you. We've walked this pathway ourselves. We've created this place called DLAP. And this is what we're offering to help you move forward. All your assessors, all your assessor friends, anybody, your supervisors, managers, anybody who is responsible for assessing evidence or a person against a set of standards is basically who this is built for. And that's where we're going. So that's just an offer for everyone from us. Happy Christmas. And then, of course, the last slide for the day. So you can just, with your phone QR code. The first QR code is an ecosystem paper that we've done, and we're submitting, we're even submitting it to a few master's students to unpack it and validate it. It's the whole ecosystem around assessment. It's a 25-page paper. It's got some good imagery in it, but it really defines everything from how to assess for formative, how to assess for summative, how to assess for workplace integrated, who are the role players, what type of technologies can be used, who are the moderators. So really, really a detailed paper. And then the bottom QR code on the right is linking to what I just showed you above, more about the digital assessor movement that you get involved with in the different levels, and everyone can move forward from there.